Hi there, I'm Zach. I'm a college student learning about game design, and this is the first week of progress on my game. I make Overwatch custom games and stream the process every week. You can catch me live on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 1:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you're interested in making your own custom games, learning about custom game design, or just want to hang out. I also make music, so here's a link to my channel that will be provided in the description. Several weeks back, as I waited in a 20-minute queue for a comp match my 5-stack would inevitably lose, I was perusing through the custom game catalog when I came across a mode with a very intriguing concept. A wave of nostalgia rushed over me as I became entranced with this mode. BEN10 Free-for-All. In this mode, players participate in a free-for-all, only playing as D.Va. Players can cycle through heroes, and once they earn their ultimates, they're able to transform. BEN10 was a huge part of my childhood, and this mode had the perfect concept, but it was missing something. I wanted to put my own touch on it. I wanted to capture the feeling of being Ben and expand on Meet Me Maker's game idea, so I got to work. Day 1 would be focused on laying the groundwork and setting up the formatting for my game. I'd be making the game from scratch, incorporating all I had learned from my experience making Overwatch custom games to play with my friends. First, we needed Ben. I needed two things. I wanted Ben to be just like a normal guy like he was in the show, and Ben needed to be someone that I knew I wouldn't need for an alien later on. I got out my whiteboard and wrote down all of the 10 original aliens in order, and determined which hero would fit the role, based mostly on their appearance, but also slightly on some abilities. After determining who Ben couldn't be, I realized I wasted over an hour on something so arbitrary and just picked Lifeweaver. Next was setting up the Omnitrix. I opted into a system I had employed in various other custom games that made in the past, and made a simple cycle system after disabling all of Lifeweaver's abilities. You can cycle the watch up by pressing the primary fire button and cycle down by pressing the secondary fire. I add text prompts to the corner of the HUD to make testing easier and help players get introduced to the game's concepts earlier. On the right, you can see the cycling of the watch, and on the left, you can see a tutorial for the character that changes based on if you're Ben or what alien you are. The tutorial also hides so it doesn't clutter your screen unless you hold the interact button to read it. After, I added the ability to transform. This took a while, but the basic idea is that whenever we cycle the watch, we're actually incrementing a number up and down. Each number corresponds with a different text display, and therefore a different alien is communicated to the player. Whenever the player is on Lifeweaver and they press the ultimate button, they will turn into the alien that corresponds to the number. But now we have a problem. Mainly, we can't change back. So after some trial and error, I came up with a timer that pays homage to the show and added a couple of play effects. When you transform into the alien, there is a green explosion that occurs to signify this change, and when you transform back, the same will happen. I also learned from my previous game modes you need to reset parameters after death or some wacky things can happen. I made 2 resets for Lifeweaver. The first occurs when you die and changes the character back to Lifeweaver. The second occurs when you spawn back in and resets all the changes that could have happened when you changed into another hero. Finally, I made sure my code was structured to what was most readable for me. My modes usually involve changing multiple heroes with various blocks of code, so I like to disable a rule and name it the character to group them all together and make it easier to find if I need to change it later. So with that, day 1 and the majority of the setup was complete. So now, it's Wednesday and I haven't touched the game mode since Monday. With most of the groundwork laid out, we can move on to designing our heroes. First on the list, according to the BEN10 intro, is WILDMUTT. I decided to make WILDMUTT into Winston, as both WILDMUTT and Winston have a similar 4-legged stance, and Winston's got that dog in him. I planned out what each of his abilities and passives he would have the night before so it would be easier to program. So iconically, WILDMUTT is blind as he has no eyes, so the first thing I decided to do was make Winston blind. This was terrible for testing, so I decided to disable it immediately, but I may re-enable it if he annoys me too much later. Next, I thought Winston wasn't fast enough, so instead of just increasing his base movement speed, I gave him a meter and a sprint ability. The meter builds up over time and depletes as you hold the sprint button. I wanted you to feel like you have a lot of movement options on this character, so I had a couple of ideas for vertical movement. I thought about adding climbing walls or double jumping, but it didn't quite feel right in my head, so I ended up deciding to add a wall jump instead. I ended up recycling a wall jump mechanic I had previously made for another game mode, and I adapted it to the code for this new mode, and it works seamlessly. Another iconic feature on WILDMUTT is the sharp claws, so I wanted to implement that as well. By default, we already set up that all heroes have no abilities, so we could implement our own. This includes primary and secondary fire, so I decided to take advantage of this. First, I set up the ability to auto punch on Winston by holding the primary fire button. This feels very natural to play in game and gives players an impression that it should be their main source of damage dealing potential. After that, I wanted to give the claws some bite and make them feel sharp. To do this, I added a bleed effect to Winston's melee attack and added an effect when you make contact with the melee on a victim. I didn't want to overcomplicate the character, so I left his leap basically the same, but with some added functionality. Leap has a shorter distance but flings foes really far, and can be used to achieve environmental kills or to push back foes and escape. With the primary ability 1 and ability 2 in use, his secondary felt empty and lacking, so to remedy this, I wanted to make a grapple attack. To do this, I need to indicate to the player that something was happening when they hit the secondary fire button. The original idea would have been to have Winston wave, but when I attempted this, he would just say hello in the chat and not wave at all. So I ended up making him crouch instead to show that something was happening. I then made the attack in a cone shape to knock enemies down. To achieve the cone shape, I basically took a survey of everyone in the radius around Winston in a sphere. Then I removed everyone from the list that wasn't in his view angle. After that, I removed Winston from the list. This basically means that only the people in front of Winston are left and are knocked down. Finally, it was onto his ult. I like the way his ult functioned already, so I just modified it a little bit. I made his ult do less knockback, last significantly shorter, generate much faster, and cause a stronger bleed effect. All of this adds to make a fast-paced and powerful ultimate. With that, WILDMUTT was finished and I ended stream for the day. On Friday, I started work on the second alien, Forearms. Forearms is a staple of BEN10, and to portray him I chose Ramatra because he's tall. I didn't prepare anything beforehand for Ramatra like I did on WILDMUTT, so I'd have to improvise. For Ramatra, I didn't want him to be a tiny wizard, so I decided to make him always big. To accomplish this, I made the game look at his maximum health. His max health increases when he's in Nemesis form. To start, I gave him 0% cooldown on his Nemesis form. After that, I made it to where if his max health is under the Nemesis threshold, then the game will transform you into Nemesis form. This makes it to where every time you're in Omnic form, the game will try to put you in Nemesis form forever until you switch. Now that he's always big, I decided to make him have a Sonic Boom clap attack. To do this, I rooted the player every time he switches and Ramatra claps. I then made use of the newer projectile system they added in the workshop to make projectiles easier in order to form this attack. I made the attack knock back foes and ended up letting it bounce off objects as well as giving it gravity to give it a little personality. I let Ramatra have the ability to block, punch, and melee as well. Finally, I wanted to make Ramatra's fist feel strong and more impactful as well, like Forearms, so I made it to where when you punch an enemy, it will knock them back and toss them. I look forward to embarking on this exciting journey of reimagining BEN10 within Overwatch, where we crafted unique heroes with unique abilities, like Winston embodying WILDMUTT's agility and Ramatra channeling Forearms' power. Join me on Twitch as we delve into custom game design, nurture creativity, and build a supportive community every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1:30 Central Standard Time. Subscribe for more. Keep creating and exploring. This has been Zach on Arc Warlock Plays. Until next time.